We have a number of robberies and break-ins that happen in our sites. And when you review the footage, you see some behaviours that are not ideal. But the key piece around that is to really congratulate the good behaviour, the way that people have retreated to their safe havens, the way that they have hit their duress buttons to call for help. We want people to feel safe. We don't want them to feel like they're being watched all the time. We want them to know that the behaviours that they exhibit that make a difference to keeping themselves safe are the key things that we want to be talking about.
You're listening to the Retail Crime Intelligence Podcast by Auror, where we share actionable insights to help you reduce crime and violence in your stores.
Welcome to the Intel by Auror. My name is Sean. I'm a Retail Partnerships Manager for Auror based in Melbourne in Australia. And today I have the privilege of being joined by Emily Milner from BP. Emily, do you want to give a quick introduction to yourself?
Oh, absolutely. I'm Emily Milner. I work for BP. My role is Country Security Manager for ANZ, and that covers not just the retail side of the business, but also all of our other businesses within the Australian-New Zealand market. So aviation sites, terminal sites, and our office buildings and other assets that we've got within the space.
You're the Country Security Manager. How did you get into safety and security?
Great question. I've been doing this type of role for somewhere between 17 to 20 years now. So I started off in this role in the UK when I was over there, and it was for one of the DIY companies. It was meant to be a short-term kind of profit protection type role, supporting some of the highest risk stores in the company. And it kind of started out very much like, it seems a bit interesting. I do like a good bit of process. I like helping support the teams. Great. And it rolled into this career that I've been able to move across the world with it. So went from DIY in the UK across to New Zealand, which is where I'm from originally. Worked for one of the major retailers over there, Warehouse Stationery. Spent some time actually working in security for a few years, which was really cool. Moved to Australia and have spent some time with some big name brands over here as well. And now I'm at BP.
That's quite a lot for something that started as a temporary role. So what was it about that particular industry or scope that kept you hooked into it?
I guess there's no 2 days that are the same. Genuinely, the challenges that come up every day keeps it interesting, but you always have the background of what's my process and what's my priority. My priority is always keep my people safe, and then there's a process that you can follow that helps people in the moment deal with whatever is going on in their lives.
And keeping people safe aligns very closely with what our mission is generally. Talk to me a little bit more about how you ensure that people are the priority through the processes that you carry out.
Yeah, really interesting. In BP, it doesn't matter which part of the business you're in, but the priority is always people first. Culturally, we genuinely put our people first within our retail settings. If our team doesn't feel safe, the process is stop what you're doing, go to your safe haven and hit the fog cannon button in your duress. Ask for help. It really doesn't matter which bit of the business you're in. It's if you don't feel safe, if it's not right, stop what you're doing. And that's the same from the refineries, the terminals, all of the sites.
Mm-hmm. And so BP has such a strong focus on people generally. Have you seen that focus on people evolve much during your time?
I think it's always been there. So when I think about all of the different roles I've had, the key piece has been around how do we keep our people safe? How do we keep businesses safe? Because there's always kind of unintended consequences if you don't focus on your people. You will get people who won't necessarily follow the right process. You'll get reactions from offenders, customers that may cause other issues. So I think that it's probably one of the key cornerstones of loss prevention security, and it really doesn't matter which industry you're in. The people have got to be the first priority.
So talk to me a bit more about unintended consequences. So your role is so predicated on the safety of people and then assets and whatnot as well. How do you build out a process that mitigates what some of those potential issues might occur? And how does your experience then weigh into that overall?
It's really difficult, I have to say. When I think about some of the things that are happening in New Zealand right now, we've got a government in New Zealand who wants to be strong on crime and strong on consequences. They're doing some really good stuff in this space, but there are some potential unintended consequences with some of the things that they're looking at. So when I think about places where you can do citizens arrest, as a leader in security and loss prevention, I want our team to be safe. So I would never tell my team that it is okay to go and put themselves in harm's way. The unintended consequence of that is if a customer then chooses to step in, what could happen to that customer? Unfortunately, in our part of the world, we do have a large number of people who are carrying weapons, particularly if they're coming into our sites with ill intent. And those weapons aren't small. They are bladed weapons, but they also utilise items and objects in our stores as weapons. So when you think about, all right, my team member's safe, but the legislation says actually someone else can intervene, what could happen to that person? And that's a consequence that a person who really cares for people in general, you don't want that for anyone. And I understand why people think this is a great idea, because holding people to account is important. But you have to think beyond the immediate, I think. And that's really key for anyone who's looking at these spaces of changing process, changing legislation, changing how we operate in general.
And we have the privilege of working together on a day-to-day basis, so we've shared in some of those challenges as well. What I find so impressive about the approach that not just you but BP takes is echoing exactly what you said about people first. How do you ensure that those people are built into your overall process? Do you consider the problem? Do you consider what the solution might be? Do you consider what the process needs to be around it? Do you consider how it needs to be evolved?
We start with the ideal outcome.
Yep.
And then understand what actually happens on a day-to-day basis, because we can say, this is the outcome and we are here, we can take that journey and we can write a process to get us from one place to another. But unless we understand what actually happens, what our team members are doing on a daily basis, we could write a process that they're not going to follow or can't follow. So we go, all right, this is our outcome. Let's understand how the work is done and then work a process through so that we're not going to impact their day-to-day, but we're going to get the desired outcome.
Yeah. And you've answered this question a bit, but I'd be keen to hear the very specific answer to it. What does it mean to you to spend your days keeping people safe?
Oh, it's massive. I guess it's not a conscious thought anymore. It very much is just part of the way you're almost geared to go through what is the worst case scenario? How do I keep my people safe from that? That is the way you are automatically, your brain starts working like that. If it's a robbery, you sit there and go, okay, how do we ensure that our team members don't have to go through this again? But if it's a protest activity, how do we make sure our team and our customers are kept safe from that activity while still allowing people who have a right to do that can do that? So it's not just care for our people, but it's care for other people. But it really becomes so ingrained in you that you just operate. It's part of the reason why we do what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any challenges internally with seeing this on a day-to-day basis yourself and understanding the reality of what safety and security means to store operations or site operations? Do you have any challenges internally representing what the gravity of that is to, say, stakeholders within a business? And then has that changed over the last 15 odd years, 20 odd years that you've been in the industry?
Really, really good question. I think representing it is one thing. So you can talk about the numbers, and the numbers have absolutely changed over time. Like the increase in violent and aggressive incidents, particularly since COVID, has gone up in a number of markets. The types of incidents where people are carrying weapons, that's increased. Is that any different anywhere else in the world? I don't think so. In the UK and the US, it seems to be the same. So representing those numbers is one thing, but actually getting leaders to walk in the shoes of the team members, that's actually something else. And I think we do have some amazing leaders within BP who are really empathetic. But one of the stats that's actually from our side of things, like multiple different businesses, it's more dangerous to work in retail than it is in refining and mining. that kind of piece really makes you go, wow,
Yeah.
you control who's allowed into a refinery. You control who's allowed into an office space. You can control who's allowed out to an aviation site, to a terminal. In retail, we open our doors and we say, come on in.
Mm-hmm.
We can't control that to a point. So I think we've got to be really mindful of that. When we are talking to our leaders, we need to really make sure we've got a human face to some of these numbers, where we're sitting there saying, we've had incidents and we haven't had an injury. That's great. That is so good that we haven't. But be aware that there are other impacts, people's ability to feel safe in their place of work. That's really key as well.
Yeah. I love the point you made about BP having really empathetic leaders. It's so important when you have a role like yours where it speaks to safety and security first and foremost. One of the big challenges I hear often in my role is people being able to attach KPIs, which is maybe the most sanitized way I can use to describe that, to things like safety and security. What's been your experience in coming into BP where it is very safety and people-led versus maybe other places where it may be a little bit more focused towards, say, a financial outcome first and foremost or an ROI?
There's probably a couple of things there. A return on investment is always really important.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter whether you are in a retail industry or you're in any other business. No one is in business to lose money or to break even. Everyone's in business to make money. So that return on investment is really key. But how you measure that is also really interesting. So it could be that you measure it in a financial way and that becomes your priority and your focus. But it could also be you measure it in terms of safety. So one of the key things at BP is we want to have zero life-changing incidents.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great KPI to have.
Yeah.
And I think when we talk about KPIs, they do need to align with your values as a business. They really do need to talk to who you are as a company and who you want to be. But you also have to make sure that those values and those KPIs are kept alive.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are continually talking about money, that will be the thing that people focus on. If you're talking about money all the time, they'll recognise that maybe people isn't the focus.
Yeah.
And that's one of the really good things that I've found at BP is literally all the conversations you have start off with people.
Yeah. Zero life-changing incidents is such an interesting KPI, again, for lack of a better term. What stands out to me there is that in security, it feels like a lot of those numbers and returns you're talking about is actually trying to keep things at zero. It's effectively the absence of a report or an event that marks success. Would you say that's somewhat accurate?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
So I would love to aim for zero.
Yeah.
If I ever got zero, I would think something was wrong
Okay.
because that would tell me that people aren't reporting.
Yeah.
For security incidents in our retail sites, I don't know if zero is achievable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think what we want to do is make sure we've got a place where it's safe to report. So it's okay to not have zero reports, but also let's aim for creating a place that is safe and secure so that the number of incidents does go down is equally important.
And how do you create a space where people might feel a sense of accountability for something going wrong? So how do you create that safe space where people feel like they can report and feel like there's help or assistance being offered on the other side of that report?
Yeah, unfortunately, we have a number of robberies and break-ins that happen in our sites. When you review the footage, you see some behaviours that are not ideal. But the key piece around that is to really congratulate the good behaviour, the way that people have retreated to their safe haven, the way that they have hit the fog cannons, the way that they have hit their duress buttons to call for help. When they've done that, that's the stuff you celebrate. You don't talk about the fact that they were on their phone.
Yep.
We want people to feel safe. We don't want them to feel like they're being watched all the time. We want them to know that the behaviours that they exhibit that make a difference to keeping themselves safe are the key things that we want to be talking about.
Awesome. I'm keen to talk a lot more about BP, but I do want to backtrack a little bit. So you mentioned a fairly diverse career across retail overall. What are some of the things that stand out to you about the differences in, say, the retail experience you have with where you sit now that sits both in the retail side of BP's convenience, but also with aviation and maritime security?
I feel like retail is just one facet of security. By no means the least complex, but probably less legislated than some of the other areas that I deal with. So yes, in retail we have requirements around privacy when it comes to things like CCTV and information and that kind of thing. When we come to some of the other industries, aviation and maritime, there are things written into legislation that we must have maritime security plans. We need to abide by Annex 17, which is one of the international aviation codes. So very, very different, a lot stricter, and in some ways a lot easier to deal with because there is real clarity on what you need to do and what you can't do.
Yeah.
With retail, there seems to be a lot more flexibility. So within the realms of privacy, CCTV, there's a lot you can do. But I think that's probably the big difference.
Is there anything that the retail industry can learn from maritime or aviation rules and the heavy legislation? Now, it sounds like both a gift and a curse that the retail industry is less legislated. You've got a lot more freedom in there.
I think there's probably a little bit around what's playing out in CCTV at the moment around facial recognition. So operating across both Australia and New Zealand, we've had trials go on in both countries, had different outcomes from the two different privacy commissioner and the privacy officer over in New Zealand. We need to be really clear about what is the purpose that we are utilising that technology for, but to have some guidelines to say, you can do this, and these are the goalposts, rather than going, oh, there's some principles here, great, but actually there's nothing that says you can't do it. So how do we make sure that when we do it, we've got some tools to implement? Not every retailer is going to have the benefit of having a legal team. Not every retailer is going to have the benefit of having someone who knows about security or loss prevention. And when I think about some of our smaller retailers, mum and dad owners of corner shops or fashion retailers who've got like one or two sites because it's their own personal brand, how did they know what is the right way of implementing some of this? So there's got to be some really good, clear guidelines that can help not just the big retailers, but the smaller retailers on how to navigate some of this new technology that's emerging in a responsible, respectful way.
Yeah. How well or not well do you feel that the regulations around retail crime are keeping up with the threat and the technology available to be able to combat that threat?
I think there is a lot out there and there is some great government support. What is difficult is the reporting piece. So if it's large-scale breach, there's a really clear pathway and we all know kind of the big ones that have happened recently. And there's some really clear stuff for that. But when it comes to that organised retail crime where people have somehow off the dark web grabbed credit card details, loaded them up onto wallets on their phones and are literally going through stores, tapping away, buying things, maxing out somebody else's credit card. Trying to piece that together for retailers can be really difficult because those people move really quickly and change cards really often. And then reporting that through to the police, difficult. And unfortunately, in all of the areas that I work, the police are unfortunately all understaffed, at pressure to deliver, and actually trying to put together cases that you can just give to the police is really difficult.
Yeah.
So I think one of the challenges is organised retail crime evolves so quickly and you have to try and keep up. But it is also very difficult to keep up because as soon as you stop one avenue, another one opens up. If that criminal element put their mind to being an entrepreneur or to genuinely good work, they would be amazing.
Yeah, and you work quite closely in an international team, generally with a global focus. So whilst your role is localized to Australia, New Zealand, you have those resources. How do you work together with your international team to stay ahead of the threats that might hit Australia or are currently hitting Australia and may flow on to those other major markets as well?
We have a global retail security leadership team that I sit in, and I sit in the leadership team for Asia Pac for security in general. And we all talk on a really regular basis. And it's that key piece around communication. You cannot communicate enough. The challenges that we face over here are challenges that are faced in the US and the UK. And we all learn from each other around what technologies are working well. So on our side of the world, we have smoke cloaks or fog cannons. Pick your own brand, whatever you like. But that technology seems to have worked really well in minimising our loss through robberies, burglaries. and removing offenders rapidly from our sites. Our UK market is looking into how is that technology really going to help them with the issues that they're having. Now, the way we've implemented it may not be the right way for them, but at least they have seen the evidence that it can be really effective. What we're showing here is for the UK, they can actually develop a really good use case. And for the US, they're looking at what we're doing in our markets as well to go, actually, from a reporting point of view, what does this deliver for us? How do we use this? And can that really become part of our way of working as well? So we all do learn from each other. How is that working? Which sites are you using that in? Because that may or may not work in all sites, but it really does open your eyes as to what technology is out there that we may or may not have, but also might be used in a different way.
You've got such a strong gift of curiosity, I think, is the big thing that I'm getting from that. But it also sounds like your teams operate quite cohesively. There's some teams, I think, that work even in the same market that don't have a strong communication. What would you say are the key principles or the secret to good communication within a team?
I think genuinely one of the big things is having a safe space. Karen, who's our global lead, she has created this wonderful culture where everything is okay to say. Right? What you are experiencing is a genuine thing to be spoken about. As leaders, we all come from slightly different backgrounds, but we all share the same portfolio to a point, and we all have the same level of care for our teams. It becomes this wonderful place where you can sit there and go, oh, I'm really frustrated with this at the moment. And then you get, hey, have you tried this? So kudos to Karen for creating that. And I think that place of respect and safety is massive. It very much is. You are respected for the experience that you have and the views that you bring.
Yeah. That's so interesting, that psychological safety aspect. How much do you feel that leaning on people who come from, like, you have a very strong retail background, there are some different challenges with that within the oil industry. So how do you, I guess, help build the psychological safety for people who may not have that same background and experience and ensure that their views are welcome in day-to-day conversations?
It doesn't matter what your background is. Everybody has a viewpoint. Everyone has their own experiences. And whether you agree with their viewpoint or whether you have had their experiences doesn't really matter. As long as you listen and understand and you've got empathy, I think that is really a key to that. We can all have a good conversation and still not agree on something.
Mm-hmm.
It can be a good, respectful conversation. And I think that creates that place where it's okay to say anything and being safe knowing that you're respected for that. That's, for me, the key thing.
Yeah. We have a principle in our team that is that you disagree with the idea, not the person.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's something that's so easy to say, but it's quite difficult to do in practice as well, especially when someone has quite a strong opinion about something that sits within your remit. Being able to deal with that can at times be quite challenging. We've talked a little bit about the international collaboration that you generally have. Where do you see the differences in the market? Say BP is a UK headquartered business. Australia is quite different. You sit as the country manager for Australia and New Zealand, which is two countries as one.
Yeah.
But I guess, firstly, how do the differences with the UK and a UK way of working impact your Australian role, especially considering you have UK work experience as well?
The cultural piece is really interesting. So the UK is massively multicultural. I also think they come from a place of being an exceptionally established business. The UK does seem to have dealt with a lot more in the retail space from a loss prevention security point of view, a lot more than what we have here in Australia and New Zealand. And I'm not saying that we don't have issues, but it certainly feels very much like the issues that I was dealing with when I was in the UK many years ago are the ones that we're dealing with now.
Yeah.
So I think we are exceptionally lucky down here that we have seen a slower progression. But I also think that there's that piece where the UK can also learn from some of the stuff that we've done where we've gone, we don't want to be there, so this is how we're dealing with it and trying to be on the front foot. And I think in the UK that can be very difficult to be on the front foot because things do seem to evolve very quickly over there. So I think there's got to be that understanding that as much as we are very similar, we still have some differences. And if you don't recognise that, you will get some, I guess, challenges around the processes that you're working through.
Let's talk a little bit about technology.
Yes.
So you've worked in a range of different places and geographies. How have you seen technology change since you started out in your temporary role way back when to now when we're talking fog cannons and facial recognition? What has been the thread that has been driving some of that development, do you think?
Oh, look, genuinely, the changes in some of the technology has been massive. So when I first started, CCTV was analog. You might have been able to integrate it with a POS unit, maybe. Some systems.
Cloud didn't mean anything back then.
I'm going to give away my age when I sit there and say I am older than the internet. So, yeah, there wasn't a way of dialing in to systems. Some of them still used VHS tapes.
Yeah.
So for those young...
Some still do.
I was going to say, for those young people out there, you might need to Google what that is. But as technology has changed, thinking about mobile phones, thinking about the internet, as those things have changed, security's had to change as well. And I think where we start looking at CCTV now, where we are digital, we integrate more with so many different things. The future of that space is amazing, and the tool that CCTV can become, phenomenal. Some of the technology that is already out there, facial recognition, license plate recognition, integration with POS, integration with building management, access control systems, massive. But then when you also think about some of the other things that it can do, for us, one of the things that we have a massive risk associated with is pool fire. So essentially when petrol on a forecourt catches fire.
Yep.
Really dangerous and something that needs to be avoided at all costs. But actually some of the technologies out there can pick up on sort of changes in heat. So when we think about thermal imaging, that kind of thing. So the possibilities are endless. When we're looking at the systems now, what we need to remember is the CCTV that we had 20 years ago, where it was kind of like, I buy a fridge, I put it in, I run the fridge until it dies, I buy a new fridge.
Yeah.
That is not what CCTV is anymore. CCTV is very much like your laptop or your MacBook, where I buy one and I want to make sure that I'm getting the top end or I'm getting the right spec for the work that I need to do so that it can grow with me over time. There are efficiencies that come with that. There are other areas of the business that can then see the benefits of the technology that you're bringing into place. And it removes a level of, I guess, danger as well. So if you think about a site that has been broken into, and this could be any site, not just a BP petrol station, it could be any site. If you have a system that is smart enough to go, I recognise that the alarm's gone off in this area, I can utilise the images on this part of the CCTV system. I can then send a link through to a nominated person to review this, to go, I can confirm there's a person on site. So firstly, you'll get a faster response from the police because already we know that there's a person on site. But secondly, whoever it is that's going to respond from a business point of view is given the right tools to go, actually, I need to have a guard with me. I don't want to go onto site until I've got the police with me because I know there's already someone there. So the ability to keep yourself safer, massive. And that's just some of the really amazing things that have come about with this change in technology over time. Very excited to see where the world goes.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Was we were talking earlier about how threats are evolving. What do you do to ensure that your systems are future-proofed so that they're scalable and adaptable enough to keep up with threats as they evolve and as, I guess, criminals and offenders get more sophisticated?
That's actually really hard. And I think one of the things that is critical to do is to keep on top of the technology changes. So going and talking to technology vendors. So talk to CCTV vendors, talk to access control vendors, talk to safe or cash recycling machine vendors, because they will be able to tell you what the actual brand owners are planning and are doing. And if you can get a relationship with them as well, they will tell you what's coming. And then you can sit there and go, cool, I now know what's out there and what is coming. How does that fit with my journey or our journey as a business? One of the things that we're doing is having some of these conversations with the brands currently to go, tell us where you're at now. Tell us what is the journey. Tell us where you are going.
Yeah.
Because where they're going may not suit our business, but at least we've got an idea of what's out there.
Yeah. I think one of the big things that I've gotten from this conversation with you is that you are so people focused generally. What have been some of the challenges you've had across your career, not necessarily just at BP, with your role, and how have you addressed those as well?
I think some of the things that are hardest to deal with are when you have people that are impacted by events in stores. When I think about the unfortunate piece around psychological health in retail, unfortunately, some of our team, and this is not just BP, this is everywhere, our team has to deal with some pretty harsh stuff. And when you are trying to support from a place of empathy and you see team members struggling with the day-to-day, that's really, really hard to deal with because you want to genuinely be there and help every single person every single day. But I guess that's where my sort of role comes in from a strategic point of view. We have to look at the overall and then how do we uplift for everybody every day. It is really challenging when you see some of the things that the team goes through, the racist abuse, the threats of violence. I guess that's one of the joys, but also one of the pitfalls of retail. You see everybody. You see all walks of life. Some amazing stuff, but you'll also see some not so amazing stuff.
As an empathetic person, that sounds like it would be quite challenging for you. How do you approach that from a perspective of not feeling responsible in the sense that it's part of your remit to have security? Because it's not your fault, but there is a piece of observation and knowing that you kind of have the tools that will address those.
Oh, and that's why you get out of bed every day.
Yeah.
Because you want to minimise that impact. You want to make sure that people are safe and secure.
Yeah.
It becomes very much your motivation and your reason for being.
To drive towards that zero life-changing
Absolutely.
events.
Yeah, zero life-changing events. Yeah.
What about highlights? Has there been something that you've done where you've gone, this is why I got out of bed today?
Oh, genuinely, there are some amazing highlights. Yeah. It's the joy of spending time with the team on the front line. And I have this wonderful example of it genuinely just warmed my soul. I was trying to work on some scripts for some de-escalation training that we're rolling out. And when you're working on these scripts, you're trying to channel the aggression. You're trying to channel the really not nice parts of customers that we see. And I'd written them out and I went through them with a couple of team members in one of our sites. And the response that I got was, that is spot on. You have summed up our customers every day. And to know that I'd got that part right, which meant that the de-escalation piece that we ran through afterwards were tools that they could actually genuinely use and would genuinely work for them. That was amazing because one of the team members was like, oh, that's so good. I'll make sure that I've got some space between myself and that person. Or I'm genuinely going to listen to them because I hadn't thought that they might be having a bad day. So that kind of thing, those highlights, amazing. So good.
Yeah, there is something quite incredible in spending a lot of your time ensuring that other people feel seen, but then also to feel seen back from understanding exactly where they're sitting. So great story. Look, Emily, I know you had a lot of choices of where to be today, and we're really glad you got to spend it with us. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for tuning in to the Intel by Auror. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to the Retail Crime Intelligence podcast by Auror. Don't forget to follow and subscribe on your favorite podcast app.